the day, and I'm about to throw a bunch of information at you, but let's do it. I'm Megan McKissick. I'm the Assistant Director of Make+Think+Code here at PNCA. Make+Think+Code is kind of a creative technology lab and space. So we have do workshops in different types of creative technology, as well as have a fabrication space, both digital and physical. So if you are a PNCA student or whatnot, and you want more information or want to stop by and learn how to use any of the equipment or dig deep into some creative tech stuff, I'll be there. So for today, we're going to cover kind of like machine learning, mostly for art. I have like a little bit on design as well, but since it's just a few of you, I'm curious if people wanted to introduce themselves a little bit, or if they had any interest in machine learning or experience with it.
I'm Shauna. I co-organized the symposium with Megan and chose this topic. So I definitely am very interested in machine learning and also thinking with it and engaging with artists, working with machine learning and wanting to think more with it. But I obviously am not doing math or designing algorithms. So I'm excited for this workshop. Thank you, Megan.
I'm the worst at math too, so I will say some things that I might have to double check, and I'm still also wrapping my head around all of the processes, but they get easier and easier as time goes by. Anybody else?
I'm Kate. I know nothing about this topic, and I'm really excited to learn a little more.
Everyone, I'm Alan. I'm a media artist, and I do some work with machine learning, but I'm always looking to learn more about generative methods and things like that.
Is there any particular things that you've been using or processes?
I work mainly with Keras. Like I just write models in Keras, but I do a lot of work with like autoencoders or variational autoencoders, things like that.
So you're like going straight to the source. You're doing it from scratch.
Yeah, I guess so.
Any other? Sorry to put people on the spot, but it's nice to get to know you.
I'm Daylin. I also, like some other folks have said, don't really know anything about like math, but I'm really interested in algorithms and machine learning from like a theory standpoint. So I'm excited to like experiment with them like in my visual practice too.
Oh, for some reason we can't hear you, Herman.
This should do it.
Yeah, perfect.
So, okay, I'm Herman. I teach in the collaborative design program, a class of future-centered design. I spent my whole life in high tech, and I'm really curious on how the artist world and design world sort of takes to these technologies.
Awesome. Yeah, design and where machine learning is going can sometimes be scary because some people think that they're going to be out of a job, but we obviously know that's not true. You still need human touch, at least so far. So yeah, with that, I'll go ahead and sort of get going. I'm going to move y'all to a separate screen because I've got a bunch of text and stuff. So I'm going to share a link in the chat. This is like a Notion link, and let me know if you can't access it. But I've just sort of got like a trove of information here. And then I'll start sharing my screen. Okay. Everybody see okay? And everybody accessing the Notion page all right? Cool. So I had to clean this up because I have the number of tabs open right now is probably my minimal, so I apologize. I tend to dump things into stuff to find them later. So what I kind of wanted to start with, if you're not familiar with machine learning at its basic level, we're just taking data sets, which can be sound, images, text, from an artistic standpoint, those for sure. And you're literally just kind of using algorithms to find patterns, predictions, testing hypotheses, whatnot against it. So on the simplest level, we're just going to use data to train models. Now, what's under the hood of the models can sometimes be black box written where people don't really know what's going on. And sometimes, like even myself, I don't know what's going on all the time. And that's something that you should keep in mind when you use stuff like this, because a lot of people have been using machine learning and AI algorithms without really understanding what they're doing with it. And they can be harmful, as with facial recognition software not being tested on different types of people, and generating sexist and racist protocols because they've only been trained with white faces, or haven't been utilizing different perspectives. With that in mind, I'm just going to go through some artists and stuff that we like. It's kind of fun. So I've got this list here. Go ahead. But I'm not going to go through them all, but I do have some that I thought were kind of interesting. One artist that, let's see if I go side to side. Sophia Crespa is one artist that kind of got me super interested in machine learning art, because previously I would sort of see these outputs, and granted, we're probably going to make this output today that I'm not like super excited about. They tend to look similar, but then when I saw her work, I was just kind of blown away, like, one, how pretty and grotesque it can be. But she's done quite a few things, like this neural zoo was the first thing I saw of hers. So it's kind of using machine learning to combine data sets to then generate kind of new life forms, which was kind of interesting to me. She's got lots of other stuff. She's been experimenting right now with taking some of these neural zoo textures and then applying them to 3D models, which, despite kind of this visual output that you get sometimes, you can take it into various avenues. Like, for instance, I've used one of the image style transfer models that I learned and experimented with, and then made a Snapchat augmented reality filter with it. So there's lots of different stuff that you can do. So that's a link for later. Valencia James is like a dancer and choreographer and technologist. She's been using computer vision for body tracking, and then sometimes taking these kind of outputs, and she's been experimenting with doing this in Mozilla Hubs, which is kind of an online VR space, and has been creating some really interesting theater pieces with this body tracking. Play a little bit of this trailer. So while she is using mocap suits in this instance, with new kind of computer vision cameras being quite a bit cheaper, you can do this without having mocap suits. Even something really recently like the Unreal gaming engine has taken computer vision to apply these kind of meta human textures to people so they can do facial tracking. Snapchat has software that you can make Snapchat lenses that can also do skeletal tracking where you can put segmented stuff on your body in augmented reality. Spark AR, which is Facebook's version of that, just came out and said that they're doing that too. Like all of this stuff is changing extremely quickly, so it's been pretty fast. Memo Atkin is someone I'd been following for a really long time who started out as kind of a VJ, live visual artist. And that's work that I'd come from. But he then went on to get work on his PhD in machine learning and AI. This example just sort of blew my mind. Look, it's already from 2017, so we've come quite a bit further than this, but just taking these object detections and then generating scenery around them. And it happens in real time.
Sadly, one Sunday, I waited and waited with flowers in my arms for the dream I'd created. I waited till dreams like my heart were all broken. The flowers were all dead, and the words were unspoken. The reed that I knew.
I just found that extremely fascinating. You can also use during coronavirus stuff, of course, people used machine learning to detect mask wearing and things like that. Some are more fun than others. I think maybe this one isn't working as well. But some people had used, oh, here it is, like this not a mask and mask. Oh, that's Stephanie. I apologize, my links are a little out of order. But a lot of times people would use kind of for fun, like to not touch your face. Like you can train a model, one on your face without hands touching, and then another without, with your face, with your hands touching your face. And so it gives you a big no every time you touch your face. Stephanie Dinkins has been doing a lot of interesting work with augmented reality. She has kind of created and collaborated with a robot that I've forgotten the name of, but it's in the link. This one in particular was interesting to me because she's using 3D printing to generate these sculptural elements. And then she's trained kind of a chat bot on ancestral stories that then people can interact with in public.
Yes, it's the holiday shopping. And
what kind of shopping did you do?
yes, the most of the memories.
What kind of memories?
Here's just the scrapbooks.
Where are the scrapbooks?
It's a little tough to hear the chatbot, but I really like this idea of preserving history or ancestors that you haven't been able to meet, and then sort of recreating these conversations, like oral histories, whatnot. Even for design purposes, sometimes these generative models come out as kind of looking a little kind of like eerie or grotesque, but I really love this idea of taking Mexican, South American weaving patterns, running them through machine learning algorithms to then possibly generate new ones. Like maybe there's something in there that you didn't think of before. It's like prototyping with new methods. Things don't always have to be so serious. If y'all are familiar with Janelle Shane, she wrote this book, You Look Like a Thing and I Love You. She likes to train machine learning models with interesting name data sets. She's had some that were like the hearts that you get, the candy hearts you get at Valentine's Day were really hilarious. So most of her stuff tends to be funnier, but I really love that she teamed up with the Portland guinea pig rescue, that one I didn't know that we had. But she trained a model to generate new guinea pig names. And sometimes they come out, you know, pretty hilarious, like Hallie Flope, Spooty and Snowfur, Mumpkins. Like who wouldn't want to adopt one of these guinea pigs? And then she has another list of names. She's done like ice cream flavors, all sorts of stuff. So one of the big machine learning algorithms and models that people have been using is called StyleGAN. It's a generative adversarial network, but literally we've been working with StyleGAN 2 until just recently StyleGAN 3 came out. And I think that this person is already using StyleGAN 3, but I really love the subtleness, and I would imagine seeing this projected would be super amazing. And they go into it in the article, but it's taking a lot of training for depth maps of Forestry Service data. But it also has a 3D quality that a lot of StyleGAN 2 models haven't had recently. And it's not just limited to visuals, text and sound as well. Holly Herndon is an experimental musician who's been experimenting in this space for a while. She's created kind of an AI version, her AI baby of her voice, and has been doing her PhD research in this. The two videos that I'm going to show, the best way I can explain it is her AI voice is programmed to kind of sing along with the women who are singing in kind of like tonal voice structure. I'll just it's just so gorgeous. And so when they're passing back the mic, they're singing themselves with their own voice, but that fourth mic is Holly Herndon's AI voice. And while it's hard to really tell the difference because they're all kind of in sync, it's also tested on a male voice that comes out pretty awkward and interesting. So he's singing, but it's her voice, which I just find kind of fascinating. Cool. I mean, I could go on and on. I had to like prevent. Oh, okay. Let me turn it up. I had to prevent. I had to limit the number of artists to look at because there's just so many. Like lots of people are doing this work. Okay. Thank you. So with that, are there any questions, or have anybody heard of any artists that were doing this kind of work that they've been interested in or have looked at? Well, I'm just going to close some of these tabs out, revisit them a little bit. This one was a new one that I found recently. So doing the opposite, they've trained machine learning algorithm on graffiti, but then taken the output and actually physically painted it. So you can see their input, the machine learning output, and then what they ended up painting. But then they've also made it into kind of an augmented reality piece as well. So it's going from physical to digital to physical to digital again. It's pretty interesting. One reason I wanted to close some of the tabs is that there's lots of tools that people can use now where you don't necessarily have to know how to code. One that we'll be using today and looking at is Runway. I'm going to put a link into the chat too, just so you have it. Runway is a super interesting program. Unfortunately, I think they might be doing away with their more training models section. If you go to their main page, you'll see they're mostly focused on video right now. So doing a lot of live green screening, image removal and adding, which is super impressive, because if you've ever used After Effects or something, you can know that how long it takes you to render something after seeing it. So to do it in real time is pretty awesome. And machine learning is great for stuff like that. Playform is another new one that sort of popped up. It is a lot of fun, but I haven't liked the results from this as much as I liked from Runway. With Runway, I do believe Playform is a little bit easier to get started with, but with Runway, you can change settings and try different models, where Playform, it seems to use just one type. The unfortunate thing for both of these is if you go ahead and sign up for a Runway account, it gives you $10 in training credits for free, or just use case credits. Like you can't train, unfortunately, unless you have an account. And these accounts get kind of expensive. I think for both the accounts are $30 a month or $35 a month. And then you have to also then pay per training. And sometimes that depends on how long it takes or how many steps it goes through. Teachable Machine is something that's been made by Google, which, depending on if you like Google or not, it does offer a lot of free tools. One that we'll use later called Collab Notebooks. This one is kind of interesting because you give it one type of model or one set and then another, and it can decide between them after it's been trained. And with all of these, they may look kind of simple, but you can output them to other types of things like Arduino, like maybe you want to use sensors for training. If you notice down here, TensorFlow, P5.js, which is processing, JavaScript, Node.js, all sorts of stuff. But this is pretty easy to get started with. You have just two classes, two types of things you want to decide between, and then you train a model. So you can see that it also has pose recognition, skeleton tracking. Wekinator is made as kind of, this one was an early machine learning tool for artists. You can make instruments, interactive systems. The thing in the photo is the leap motion, which does hand tracking. So you can hook things up to take in as sensors, whatnot. A lot of people have been using this in education. It could be fun to do. Magenta is also made by Google, I think, but it's built on TensorFlow, which is a machine learning process tool. It looks like they have it in Python and JavaScript if you are into coding. It mostly works with music, and it is what Holly Herndon, she has a tool made on Magenta. So you can take her voice and use it if you want. She has it open for anybody. But with that, we'll talk about Google Colab a little bit after Runway, but if you want to go ahead and open Runway, if not, you can just watch, but see if I remember, sign up. I tried to log in. I do have an account with Runway because I've experimented with it before. But when you come into Runway, you can see these different types of models. And so these are pre-trained, like where you could train your own to do stuff, not necessarily in Runway. Even if you want to do your own models, it won't let you do any training without upgrading the account, unfortunately. You can use any of the models here as long as you have enough credits to pay for running the model. And when we run the model, what we're really doing is utilizing their computing power. Runway used to have software that you could download onto your computer and use your own computer's processing power. And unfortunately, these Macs, like MacBook Pro even, probably can't run it. But if you have like a gaming style computer, you probably could. But even if you don't have a computer that can handle that kind of stuff, they're using their own servers that will run these processes for you. So you can see the different types. These are all open source. Some of them have been made by random people who have contributed. So if you like stylization, you're usually talking about style transfer. So basically you're taking the style of one image and applying it to another. You'll see a lot of this with, so like this is taking Monet paintings, and you're going to train, maybe if you want to add your face in the style of a Monet painting, you can add your photo there or some other image. There was a woman, let's see if I guess I don't have her open, but she's been taking portraits and redoing them in kind of an Afrofuturistic model style. This one was kind of nice because it's made by someone I've taken a lot of workshops from. It came off very pretty. So when you, just to go back to show you the information parts of these. So if you click on any of these models and learn more, you'll get an overview of what's available to you, what it looks like, kind of what's going on with the model, links to papers GitHub repositories, if there are any, what type of, like this is style transfer, image synthesis. And it also tells you the license, like some people have different types of licenses and how you can share these or not. Like a lot of times you just have to give attribution. And it'll tell you this is made with TensorFlow and all the other people who worked on it. You can see gallery, the permissions and license. And while each of these models are kind of fun to play around with, like some are more interesting than others. The latent videos are kind of really interesting, but sometimes with these you need, you'll see that there are different types of inputs. So this says it needs a vector input, which is usually just like a single point in the model, like it does like, you can run, I think at base level, it says like 3,000 steps, but it'll be one of the steps in there. I won't run one of these because they'll end up taking quite a long time. With any sort of machine learning model, you need tons and tons of data. So a lot of these have been trained on things that were like 500 to 3,000 images, you know, or even more. But the stylization image transfer does run fairly quickly. So for instance, if we click on this one, you could use your live camera, which I don't necessarily recommend, just because you're probably going to be moving at the time that it does what it needs to do, but you can also add a file. It's already had this image in here. So I can add a photo, and you have options where you can change levels and hover over and take like a style seed, change the width, but this is mostly based on the width of the image I already have. If I want to change some of the brightness, scale, invert, blur, anything like that. The only thing with this is that each of these models will have different input methods and parameters that you can use. If you look at this network tab, you'll see HTTP, socket.io, OSC. A lot of times you can output some of these models into like, if you use like WebSockets, you can pull them straight onto a website if you know how to code that properly. OSC is open sound control. You can host things and do stuff with processing, Unity, game engine, stuff like that. There used to be a lot more tutorials with that, but I think as Runway is changing over to video model, people aren't doing as much stuff with this. But if you have everything you need, you just run model. The $10 credits should do quite a bit for you, but just keep watch of that. And of course, they're not the fastest thing. Does anyone have questions or anything on Runway? This is not a great photo, so I don't know how well it'll turn out. Like garbage in, garbage out always for data stuff.
This is more of a general question. Does Make+Think+Code have licenses that we can use in the lab for the ones that are sort of expensive, or what's the licensing arrangement?
Unfortunately, they used to have education discounts. So even if you do workshops, they'll give you a discount to say like $12 per person with a certain number of credits. Unfortunately, this doesn't quite run on the same licensing model as you would regular software.
Too bad. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. It's all about how long it takes to train and how much computing power you're using, I think.
Mm-hmm. Although it would bootstrap the whole sort of adoption more widely if people in academia and art schools start using it.
They did try to go that route, but I think maybe it's just not been enough for them to continue. They're pretty nice about it. It's just, yeah, unfortunately, you can't just have one single license to then just run it. I am curious if I have an old copy that I just run on my desktop. But yeah, just after a few minutes, you can start to see. So it sort of can see my hair, but it can't see Spock. Oh yeah, I'll post, let me post the Notion thing again. Oh, I sent that to Megan, sorry. Not to everyone. So, I mean, this is honestly probably as good as it's going to get, so I can stop it. If you let it run, it can maybe do a better generative output, but oh well, I can sort of see Spock's hair, I think, right? I don't know, it's just a kind of an interesting model to play with. This one can run pretty fast, that's why I use it sort of as a demo. You can export it as an image. The video will just be kind of like an amalgam of the steps that it took. I don't exactly know if it would have enough to do that. It's not giving me an option. But the video exports are pretty interesting. We'll make a video with the collab notebook exercise that we do later. Let's see if I know the. There's one of image segmentation that's super interesting. Like you can see some of the video ones are pretty handy. You can remove backgrounds, find depth from images, even if they're 2D. Image analysis. So you can see the pose detection, face detection. They always have weird names like yellow. Seem to have lost the one that I was thinking. I can't tell if this is the same. There's an image segmentation one that allows you to draw, like just sketch on the image and it will generate images around it. It's like anything live, of course, it's not going to be as fast as I would like it to be. I think it's this one. So the input is going to be segmentation. And I'm going to label it, maybe I want surfboard, and you don't have to be an amazing drawer, especially with the trackpad. It's not too easy to do. And maybe I want a potted plant. I don't know why I would have that with the surfboard. They're huge. Maybe I want some clouds. So this terrible drawing, I'm going to run the model. And hopefully it doesn't take too long. Oops. With Runway, it's fun to try all the different types of machine learning models that people have. So I suggest, like, even with the $10 credits, you have, you can't do any training. You can add credits as you use them. If you do sign up for the account, then you can do training of your own models, as well as you still have to pay for the training parts, though, unfortunately. Any questions navigating around Runway or anything that might seem interesting?
Another sort of general question. It seems there's sort of a tension between easy to use but highly specialized and highly limited tools versus you go down to the code level, you got full control, but the barrier is really huge that few people can access it. What's your take on how to sort of bridge that gap so that these low-level interfaces become closer to the artist so they can focus on their artistic work and not on struggling or wrestling with the technology? And maybe it's something we just have to live with, but it seems to be a big barrier for people to get into initially. I just want to hear your thoughts.
I think that's been kind of the hard part. Like even for myself, I feel like I'm fairly technical, and I've been using collab notebooks, and if something goes wrong, I can sort of troubleshoot, but they're written in the Python programming language when I'm more used to JavaScript. Some of the things I've been doing have been, just trying to learn more. But yeah, it is, people have been making tools for artists to use, but of course, the lack of control. I think it just might be time. Like, I see people start to make stuff where maybe you could adjust parameters with a UI interface instead of having to code anything. But yeah, it might be a second. Or if people do really want to get into coding, they could start working in this, but then also start learning to use code for other purposes as well. So this one is taking quite a bit. Like when I did it the other day, it only took like a second. While I do that, I was thinking of a woman that I follow quite a bit, Charlie Gerard. She is a front-end developer, which if you see me do Twitter, it's because like everybody is on Twitter. All the technologists are on Twitter. She doesn't call herself an artist, but she's a software developer, mostly front end, but all the stuff that she does has been in JavaScript. And she's been doing these experiments with machine learning tools. And I think I just got a book of hers. She wrote a book about doing machine learning on the web for with JavaScript, but as things start to experiment, I could see her creating tools and stuff. So this one is like a little silly. It's not any spoiler alerts, but Squid Game. She's using the computer vision, body tracking to play the game with her whole body. But then I saw her demo this at a conference just recently, where you can use this more for accessibility purposes, but coding with your eyes, which I thought was pretty interesting. Probably take forever, but there are blind coders that use there's like a language called brackets, I think, that they use, but I've always been kind of blown away of how that works. But this is using computer vision to track eye movement so that she can code without typing. So unfortunately, this one is not generating as fast as I would like it to. Anything else in the meantime? Maybe I gave it too much. Doesn't seem to be doing anything. So I'll just stop it. It is, it's super interesting when it works. Like, so you can see this example here where someone drew stuff. If you draw stuff that's labeled, it will generate it. And it's usually based on open source data. When we get into Collab Notebook, there's different types, like WikiArt has data sets that people use for images, stuff like that. Runway does use external, it uses its own servers. Back in the day when they had a desktop app, you could decide to use their servers or your own. Fortunately, that was kind of slow. I apologize. One thing that I did want to do with y'all, in the Notion page on the tools software, there's this link called TextSynth, and I'll add it to the chat too. There's a group called OpenAI that has been doing a lot of research with papers as well as like APIs. So API is application programming interface. So companies and other organizations will write set of methods and data that you can access to build your own tools if you know how to code or use those methods. Just trying to think. They've released GPT-3 just came out. Like I literally just opened it today. So it's in beta, but it's going to be very similar to this text synthesis that we're using. It's just maybe a more complex model. But you can see this is based on GPT-2. So really it's just like a text synthesizer. It's a little bit scary and fun at the same time because depending on what you give it, it will sort of recreate or create new text based on what you put in. Sometimes it tends to get a little dark. For some reason, it likes to get dire after a certain amount of time, or how many times you do it, or tend to be a little bit more serious. But for instance, like I'm going to take a passage from Glitch Feminism by Legacy Russell just to see what it gives me. I tried this the other day, so I'm curious if I'll get something similar. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in here. And there are different models you can try. I would just leave it as is. You can play with the different numbers to see different things you get. If you look at the examples, there are different types of things you can pick out, like Area 51, HTML, which this GPT-3 has been used recently. Like if you're familiar with GitHub, it's an open repository of open source code that people write. And they've recently generated this thing where you can generate code. It's like trained itself on all of the open source code. So if you start coding, it has like a predictive text that sort of starts adding code for you. I haven't messed with it too much. Like some people find it scary, but I don't think it's good enough that you could write a whole program in. But I know that stuff changes pretty quickly. So I'm just going to take this quote and then press complete text, and it will just start generating stuff for me. So it's taken Legacy's quote and then attributed it to Jody Mack. She's working on an interactive art project with Google called The End of the Internet as We Know It. If I just generate another, it'll start over. It's interesting, it adds like, up to the release of Glitch, I wanted to share this essay by a pioneer of glitch art, Kate Crawford, who was actually an AI author. So sometimes it gets weird and sometimes not, but as an exercise, if y'all would generate a few just to get a couple of sentences, because we'll either use that or text that you want as part of our collab experiment. So you can play with that for a second. I'll open collab. That's pretty wild. This would be great if you're having a hard time writing artist statements because it's pretty good. I did add a link here too with Collaboratory. If you don't have a Google account, you would have to sign up for Google, unfortunately. And whether you like to work with Google or not, just how you think about the company. This is free. You can buy monthly subscriptions to get better servers. I didn't write this code. A lot of people share their own collab notebooks. I've added in different resources. There's like a lot of different notebooks that you can use and try out. Some are, a bit more complicated than others, but this one runs fairly quick and doesn't require us to do a ton of input. So I'm pretty sure I made this shareable as a link, but I'm gonna do that again to post in the chat. Is everyone okay with the text synthesis or have any questions on that? I'm actually going to use her quote for the collab notebook. Is everyone able to open collab notebook? What this is, and I'll apologize because I can never remember what all the names are of the different instances. So like VQGAN and CLIP. CLIP is a machine learning algorithm that helps generate images from text, and then GAN is generative adversarial network. And so basically what a generative adversarial network does is it takes, it's got kind of two networks going on in it. And so it takes images that one network is generating and the other one tries to tell if it's fake or not. And then they kind of go back and forth until it becomes more realistic. And I know that's not a great way to explain it, but it's kind of an interesting process. It's like the closer it gets to realistic, it starts to fool the other network, and then it starts generating these images. And the reason that they'll have kind of an animation is and people correct me if I'm wrong, because like I always get mixed up and I've tried to wrap my head around this, but in the latent space, there's kind of, it tries to find, someone explained it to me once as like, this point is trying to find its way, the simplest and fastest way down a hill. And while it looks like a bunch of points on a 2D network, if sometimes people will graph it, it's really each point is like 512 dimensions, which I just have such a hard time with. It's like each pixel is represented on a 2D plane, but it's really represented in space as 512 dimensions, which that's where the math that I don't understand starts to get in. Does everyone have the notebook open? And if you don't want to follow along, that's totally cool too. Like you can totally do this later. One thing that is helpful is just first just make a copy for yourself. Like this one, I've already made a copy, so it's in my drive, but it will just save a copy to your drive. So if you go to File and save a copy in Drive, and then it's your own notebook that you can then go and play with later. And what we mean by notebook, this looks like a Google Doc, and yeah, this code looks wild, but they're really executable blocks of code that you can run that's using the Python programming language. And it's kind of just mind-blowing that you can just do this in a Google Doc style thing on the web. And what we're going to do here is also, we're not running this using our own GPUs, our own computers' GPUs. We're going to use Google's. So it kind of like randomizes the types of GPUs that Google has that we'll have access to just based on what's available. So when you pay, so like I actually pay for the Pro account, which is $10 a month. It's pretty cheap, but it'll give me a better GPU to run. And so it'll be faster. And there's less limitations. Like I think for the free version, you can run, it'll only run for 8 hours, which I know that sounds like a really long time, but if you're training your own models, we're talking in 1, 2, or 3 days, not just hours. But this one doesn't take that long. So after you've made a copy, Catherine Croson came up with this. Other people have like added to it. Again, they're all on Twitter. The cool thing about collab notebooks is you can see them in GitHub too. I don't know if she has this one in particular on GitHub, but so you'll see the code, but usually there's also a link that will open it in Collab Notebook. So if you did want to run it on your own computer, you could download all the libraries and code from GitHub. And if you have a powerful enough computer, you can just run it that way. So each of these will kind of have, you'll see this play symbol, and they run in order. So rather than have you do them, so if you go to runtime, you can do run all, but we want to change some settings, so we don't want to do that just yet. And if you click on this hamburger menu, you'll sort of see this table of contents, just like you would a Google Doc. And this file, you'll see it's like initializing, it's connecting me to a computer and showing me how much RAM and disk space I have. But this isn't on my computer, this is on a GPU that Google owns. If I wanted to see this with an image, I could drop an image in here. We don't have to, which is kind of nice about this, but if we did want to have a starter image or different image endpoints, we could do that. You just need to load it into the file structure. So we'll just go ahead and start pressing play. I don't care, that's not authorized by Google. And as you see this too, you'll see show code. So this is just the license. So it's going to tell us like permissions granted, whatnot. Each of these will be different because they're written by different people. I'll press play on this. and it'll sort of show me the GPU I'm using. And again, if this looks wild, you don't have to worry about it. This is going to start taking in and getting libraries and things that I need to run this software. So some of these will take a long time. You'll see on here the notebook downloads 1024 and 16. They're different models that are already in here. So this is loading faster than I could read it. And they'll turn green and give a number when they're done. So you can see this is number 2. This should show up as number 3 when it's done. And again, we don't really have to worry about any of this. Even though I'm getting warnings, I've already run this code. So of course, it's giving me some hiccups. So that looks fine. Here, there are different models that we can use. You can pick between these, like, so WikiArt data set, open images. You can look these up. I'm not going to change anything just because some take longer than others to download. But what it's done here is it's only downloading the ones that you want to use so that you don't have to spend time going and getting every single one. So I'm just going to press play. And even though this is still running, I can press play on the next one because it's going to do it in order after this one starts running. And this will usually take some of the longest because what you're not seeing is that, you know, it can't just run just Python code. It needs like maybe the TensorFlow library. It might need some other, it needs these like trained data set libraries of images to run too. So that's why it takes so long. But the nice thing about the notebooks is that I don't have to go around and find each of these libraries and download them to my computer and then make sure I have the proper version. Like it's running right now. It's not stored on my computer, it's just stored in my Google Drive. After this runs will be what we're going to actually input and change. So they're pretty good about documenting this. So you can see because it's Python, if you want multi-lines or if you have lots of text, you can't separate it with a comma per se. It needs to be this bracket, which yeah, nice. Thanks, Danielle. If you're not sure what that is, it's like usually up there next to the brackets. Like you have to, I think you have to hold shift for this one. But I've just got kind of this one line. So I'm going to come into text. I just expanded it too much. And I'm going to add that glitch quote because there's a colon here and it's could be 2 lines. I'm going to go ahead and just separate it. Probably doesn't matter too much. You don't have to worry about these. If you did have an initial image and you had uploaded it to the files here, you need to copy that exact pathway and then insert that where the initial image is. But just for time and effort, I decided not to go that route. So when I've got the text there, I'm just going to hit play. It's loaded that. So I'm going to run it, and then you'll start seeing it working. And the cool thing about this is you'll see it start processing. It'll be a little slow, but it'll start generating images. It usually starts with something that's maybe not recognizable and gets solid or more recognizable over time. And I realized because I'm using my personal one, this might be faster than yours, but I did do it on one that was the free version. And I think it took about 20 minutes. And what's cool about this, we'll be able to get a video out of this as well. Any questions so far? So here's my initial. Doesn't look like anything, but it'll start to get more interesting later. And with machine learning and everything, it can be tedious and boring. Generating data sets is really the biggest part of it. Like what we're doing here is more generative, so I don't have to put in a lot of data. But for instance, if I did want to train my own model with images, I would need to, you know, have anything from 500 to a few thousand images to get something good out of it. And they need to be, despite what you think, they need to actually be kind of similar. So for instance, I used a bunch of images of a early Ruth Dennis is like a modern dancer. And if you notice, I don't know, can you see my Finder window? You'll see I had to, they need to be square. So I had to kind of like crop them. And they're all sort of facing forward and roughly the same size. There's just like beautiful images that well, one, you have to either like scrape data sets, or there are some Google Chrome extensions that you can download lots of images. There are tools for scraping Instagram, which, you know, you just have to really watch out about whose data you're using and who you're attributing it to. But for instance, so I used all these images, which I thought were gorgeous. And let's see where. I had recently cleaned up my desktop, but then of course I made it worse. So then I output and got this video out of these images. Which if you've ever done Photoshop actions, it's super great and helping with your data set. Other people have written Python scripts. You can generate data sets. Like one I've done by taking a movie and then using this open source tool, FFmpeg, which you do have to write some scripts, but most people have got certain recipes for doing things. So I extract, use FFmpeg to extract frames from the video, like every 3 or 4 seconds, and then use that to make images to train my models. Like for this one, I just took all of these images, brought them into Photoshop, and then made a batch action so that it resized everything to the right proportion and size. Unfortunately, I had to have these like black squares because they're not technically square, but I thought it looked kind of ghostly and creepy, but I'd like to experiment with that more. So yeah, you can start to see images start to generate. It's pretty interesting. So it starts with like nothing, start to see forms come through. That looks pretty cool. And it's done already. So I'm just gonna, which, you know, if you want to get into it, you can show all the code, but you don't have to pay attention to it if you don't want to. And then I'm going to generate a video. So this is just one notebook. Like people have are very open about sharing their work for people to use. Some of them you've used for, like when I talk about the latent space, you can use sound to trigger the transitions in latent space, which I used someone's notebook when I talked about taking video stills on this one. So I've been finding it is just like an interesting process to start making things in a different way, whether it's like images or augmented reality things, or maybe working with this during filmmaking. So yeah, now my video is done. If I want, I can download this. But since it's already here, I'm gonna just play it and see what happens. And they're usually kind of short, and unfortunately they're square, and they're tools that you can do to resize stuff. Same thing with FFmpeg, or you could bring it into like Adobe Premiere and manipulate it as well. But that's pretty cool. So I got that video just based on that one quote from Legacy Russell's Glitch Feminism. And it's barely even it's just one sentence. The only thing with this is there are time limits to running. You don't want to leave it running. So let's see if I remember how to terminate. If I manage sessions, you can see how much, so this is not environmentally friendly. Just like with generating crypto, things like that, you want to be conscientious of how much resources you're using. So you can see I use like 11 gigabytes of GPU. So I'm going to go ahead and terminate that because I don't need it anymore. So you can see why I would need quite a bit of power on my personal machine to do this. And that's why using something like collab notebooks are pretty cool. Yeah, did anyone get anything to run? Get any outputs?
I didn't try. I was just amazed watching you. But I do have a question though. Could you have foreseen that based on what you input, that this was the kind of output you'd get?
You could maybe guess, like maybe the word glitch has triggered these kind of crackles to happen, but it's hard to say. I don't know.
Because then my follow-up question was, can you sort of think backwards and say, if I want this desired effect in the video, if I input this, I get more control over the output rather than the computer doing a lot of the generative work.
Yeah, I guess like if I got used to a particular data set and knew what it was looking at, but what kind of like images are in the data set, that maybe the text would trigger, because I'd have to look at what's in here, but yeah, or experiment, or if I train my own data set too, I'd have more control over it. But I do like the generative part. I kind of like developing parameters because I know personally I get too much into my own head sometimes. It like prevents me from moving forward. So sometimes this is a way to let go a little bit and then see what happens. Anybody else? I know we just sort of like ran through all this stuff, and if you are at PNCA and want to continue to do work like this, please feel free to reach out, or even if you want to do stuff via email too. And if you're not at PNCA. I mean, this was pretty much my whole process. Like, on that Notion page, I'm going to add where you can find data sets. So for instance, like I've got links and stuff. I just want to add them to that Notion page for you. So like this Instagram scraper does require a little bit of coding, written in Python. You can decide how you feel about scraping for Instagram, but like sometimes it might be fun to scrape by like color or by hashtag just to see what kind of data sets you could get. Kaggle is full of open data sets. A lot of people use this for data science programming because they need vast amounts of data. You would just need to limit yours to images, you know, or text if you want to run text machine learning algorithms. There's even like a GitHub repo for awesome public data sets. Lots of people willing to share data. Like I've even made stuff with Portland. The city has its own open data. But I'll add those to the Notion page. So it should update after I do that. Any questions, concerns? Like, I'll stop sharing my screen. Yeah, there are a lot of use cases. Like, granted, we're just making images, but you know, people have made new fonts. You can make things accessible for designers. I've got links in the resources on the Notion page, but things like even Adobe is adding machine learning stuff to their products. So like for smart cropping, for brush style, different things like that. So it's you can't quite get away from it. So it's good to learn about what's going on and how to design for it if you decide to do so. No, it's not like the lightest thing on a Saturday afternoon, but I mean, I really appreciate y'all coming and love to chat more about it. If you want to ever get into it, I'm around. We can find other cool notebooks. We can debug them if you run into them.
Wow, thank you so much, Megan. This was so interesting. I'm definitely excited to rewatch the recording to really get into the details of all you presented.
I mean, it's a little, I realize it's like hard to run the notebook while I'm telling you how to do it. But yeah, if y'all want to have a collab notebook party, we could find some cool ones to run. What about you, Alan? Like, I know you've already have written your own systems. Like, is this helpful to you, or is this like out of you're like?
No, I think it's very helpful because, you know, starting from scratch isn't ideal, you know, and I'm always interested in like seeing what other people are doing so that I could like take that and manipulate it later. And the VQ game stuff is really cool. Like I read it as we were doing it, the results are really nice.
Yeah, you could totally just take those and remix them and like maybe add something to it and then like send it back to them. People who have written those would probably love it. And like, there's so many other things I would love to show people, but I was like, I don't want to like be hours like, look at this artist and look at this person. But yeah, you could like generate chatbots for a game. Like one thing that would be kind of fun would be to make some Twitter bots so that they can do generative images and tweets about stuff. Like one woman did a really great presentation at it sounds like a boring conference. It's all CSV conference, just like, you know, comma separated values conference. But she was talking about using Markov chains, which kind of replace letters with others in the, and I'm going to murder this pronouncement, but Willamette, the French kind of like cut and paste poetry method. And she made a Twitter bot out of it about bird facts, which I thought was fun.
So one problem that I've run into a lot, I'm not really sure how you would approach this, but is that if I'm working on something and I'm going to do like an exhibit or like an installation of something that's real time with AI, like I still haven't figured out like a good way to do that, because either like I would need to have like a super powerful computer that can actually do that in real time, or try to do some sort of like a cloud-based thing.
Yeah.
Either one hasn't really worked out great for me. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Like I know some people, which is like my next thing to learn how to do, have brought stuff like that into like the Unity game engine, which can do some processing for you, like you create a space. And then Intel and other companies do have like smaller rendering machines. Like I know people have used it for touch designer installations that require a lot of processing power. I don't know if they could handle that. But then also I don't know how many processes this can do, but they've come out with TinyML. So it's like a microcontroller that's about this big that can run machine learning processes on it. I don't know if it could do this level, but I know for like people doing wildlife monitoring, like I bet camera and object detection would work on that. But yeah, it's like there's like a billion things that I want to look into, and that's like on there next.
There are places that sort of really take this to the full level, and come to mind are NYU ITP,
Mm-hmm.
and then also the MIT Media Lab perhaps, but there may be other ones, and it would be nice if you could sort of compile a list of really the places that really push the envelope of this media.
Yeah, I'll see about adding that to there. Like ITP, of course, is a big one, and a lot of their stuff is, I love that they put their like syllabi and some class notes online, like Daniel Schiffman, who does a lot of like creative coding YouTube videos. Like he's a very excitable person, but fun to learn creative coding from, because most people tend to be a little more monotone, but he's got a machine learning class that he does at ITP with all the notes online. And then I think the Runway ML product came out of that. Like one student there, I think this was his thesis project that then he made into a product. But yeah, I'll look around. Like there's a couple of places in England, like Goldsmith Creative Computing Institute does stuff like this too.
And then are there like exhibitions, international exhibitions that really focus on this topic?
I'm not sure. I keep trying to find stuff, and I need to like, I gave you all the organized list. I have dumps of links that I need to like go reorganize. I just have, I'm such a horrible person with like tabs. So I have to like, okay, put this somewhere and then come back to it. But there are a couple of conferences that do really cool AI and machine learning artwork and talks and papers that I had a couple of links to that I'll add to that too.
Thanks.
This is exciting. I was a little nervous about this because I was like, oh, I'm just going to be like talking through all of this stuff, and I don't know if I am actually explaining it properly, but I like when people get excited about stuff I get excited about. And we've just scratched the surface. There's like so much more. Like I picked one of the more simple notebooks that gave you like cool outputs. Hi, Olive. Yeah, Olive can code for sure. We Have y'all used Scratch yet or anything? I don't know if, I don't know the age limit of that, but Scratch is like a visual programming environment that kids can use.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thank y'all so much. Let y'all get back to your weekend, and yeah, feel free. I'm gonna put my email in the chat. But yeah, if you're at PNCA, just stop on by. Otherwise, I could chat via email.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.